Hi, my name is Robert Gibson, and I'm broadcasting on the Mississauga and Anishinaabe territory. I found an interesting report from the Canadian Urban Environmental Health Research Consortium uh, that was, they linked to report um, that Evan O'Reilly made called the Residential Greenness and Substance Use. And this is from a Western University student. And it looks at substance use in Greenspace. The report found that higher levels of residential greenness were associated with lower odds of frequent binge drinking, lower odds of tobacco use, and greater odds for marijuana use in youth between 15 and 25 years old. So there was a global news article called "Is the Cannabis Industry Oversaturated?" Which talks about the number of cannabis stores potentially being too many. So that's an indication of more green space. Peterborough is known to have a lot of green space. However, this report didn't look at opioid epidemic, and there are some limitations with it as well, in terms of only focusing on urban areas for the most part. And in Peterborough, those discussions regarding the loss of park space, from planning decisions, arena developments, housing developments, museums, and institutional developments. There was a huge fight to not include a fire station in one of the major parks in Peterborough. And this also corresponds to the perception that downtown has more people using drugs. So there may be a link to green space and areas that don't have green space and substance use. The study used normalized difference vegetation index, NDVI, which is a quote measure of vegetation density based on the differences in near infrared and red light. And then the average NDVI, and this is a quote, for the total sample was 0.42 and ranged from 0.29 in the least green quartile to an average of 0.56 in the greenest quartile. And then some of the findings were quote, in the other greenest quartiles, quartile 2 and quartile 3, the odds of binge drinking were significantly lower compared to the least green quartile. So less people were binge drinking, and with greater green space. And another quote is, with any amount of binge drinking is considered risky behavior, These results suggest that increased levels of residential greenness are more strongly associated with extreme categories of binge drinking behavior, monthly and weekly, and less with rare or infrequent, less than monthly bouts of binge drinking. End quote. And then another finding was, quote, those in the Greenness 2 quartiles had a lower odds of being a current smoker compared to those in the least green quartile. Well, when considering smoking intensity, the association was strengthened, however. Right? With those in the Greenness 2 quartiles having low odds of being a low use 1 to 10 cigarettes per day smoker compared to those in least green quartile. So that's an interesting finding. However, it's important to reduce the smoking. And it's more important. I believe it's important to not stop the habit of smoking in the first place. And it's also important to not target the plant tobacco because it has a cultural significance for many indigenous people in this area. And another quote was, individuals in the second Greenness quartile had nearly 70% increase in the odds of passive marijuana use compared to those in the least green quartile. So those more marijuana use, and I'm in the environmental field, and I've seen a lot of marijuana use among peers. So that finding doesn't surprise me. But yeah, so this is another reason to advocate for increased park protection. And I wrote an article in Author newspaper about the need for parks during the pandemic and how biodiversity, increased biodiversity might help reduce the amount of future pandemics. So yeah, thank you for listening, and enjoy the rest of your day. And I will